Te koto te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Te koto nā manuhiri. No mai, haere mai ki tere whare karakia a te ato. Te koto te tato katoa. Get better. Welcome to the space made sacred over the last 118 years by Auckland Unitarians. You are light and kindness, possibility and beauty enfleshed. The latest manifestation of the universe still in the making. Your uniqueness, talents, presence, and leadership enhance this gathering. Come, all of you who are burdened, be comforted within these walls. Come, all of you discontent, make a difference and work toward justice within and beyond these walls. Come, all of you in need of meaningful connections with others along the way. Enjoy the encounter, the shared stories. Grow together in laughter and tears. All of you are gifts to each other and the world. Take your rightful place in life here and now. And afterwards, join us for morning tea, our sacrament of hospitality. It's our way of thanking our guests and visitors for honoring us by your presence. Please join us. It will be incomplete without you. To worship means to consider that which has worth. Today, we are considering with gratitude the many gifts of this community. The opportunity to be affirmed in who we are and to offer that affirmation to others. The chance to stand up together to help remake the world in the ideal of justice. The freedom to choose one's own path to truth, to learn from the travelogues of others. The space to expand one's own spirit and to reconnect after busy or humdrum weeks with the sustaining truth of one's life. Regular reminders that we must see our world through the lens of love and the aspiration to consider all life as precious. For if all of it is made of stardust, how could it not be wondrous? So this morning, let's welcome all these gifts with gratitude, for they have been paid for with many currencies. The blood of the martyrs who died so that we could be free in our religion. The sweat of those who persisted in justice's name against hostility and adversity. The tears of those who struggle to build better lives for those in this life. The questions of our children as they understand the world anew and offer their understanding to us as a fresh lens. The laughter and joy of those giddy with the embrace of community, the dollars and cents of those who gave what they could and then stretched a little more. The infinite small acts of service that make the parts greater than the whole, done by those who knew themselves in sympathy with our purposes. So today we consider with gratitude and humility what it means to pay forward what has been paid forward for us. And now with all of this, let us enter into worship with gladness in our hearts as we light our chalice. We light the chalice of our living tradition with these words. To face the world's shadows, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's tears, a chalice of courage. to face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirits, our hearts, and our lives. I would now like to invite Jonathan Mason, who's this year's chair of our canvas. For those of you who don't know, Jonathan's been around this place for a while. He's been chair of NC and caused all sorts of trouble over the years. So we welcome you back up here to share your thoughts.
Thank you, Clay. It's been maybe 3 or 4 years since I've done a talk up here. So I'm Jonathan Mason, head of the 2019 Pledge Drive. Happy to come to you today to talk about the state of the congregation, formal kickoff of our 2019-2020 Pledge Drive. Before we get to the Canvas issue, though, with the opportunity to talk to you today, I thought I'd give a personal journey of my history as a Unitarian and the ongoing development of my Unitarian theology, and then we'll talk about financials. So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan as a Unitarian. My parents are Unitarian, then stopped when my parents had a deep disagreement with the minister. When I was 12 years old, it involved the minister allowing some teenagers at the church to smoke marijuana back in the 1960s. And I started going again in 1990 when I was in New York City. And I met Mary, my partner of 30 years, who was also a Unitarian. And because we've moved around a bit, we've been part of 7 congregations back in the US, and I've been part of this congregation since 2000, when we moved to New Zealand from Cincinnati, Ohio. So on to Unitarian theology, or my sort of own personal. The first part of my Unitarian search for truth, and I often look up at these things, and one of the green one is one that I've really thought about. It's sort of the mystery of life, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But I went to this weekend meeting at a Unitarian church in Cincinnati, and at the meeting, multiple scholars analyzed the New Testament using reason and rationality, determine what was authentic and what did original Christianity look like. And the key takeaways were that there were many parts of the New Testament that were not historically accurate, and there were innovative ways to judge their authenticity. And Clay has done some wonderful sermons right around Easter. Don't know whether you're going to do anything like that next week, but on sort of the historical Jesus and what original Christianity looked like. But for me, with a lover of history, this conference kicked off 15 years of research on the New Testament and the early Christian church, and I've probably given, over the 20 years, 6 talks on that to the congregation. So, sort of New Testament through a Unitarian lens. So, I still am interested in the New Testament and watch the occasional show on the History Channel and stuff. But I've moved really, about 8 years ago, moved into a new part of the green, search for truth and meaning. And I gave a talk here 8 years ago with the connection between time and the natural world around us. So just a brief summary of that. As I've gotten older, and I think about parents, grandparents, in-laws, and the passage of time, 100 years ago doesn't seem as long as it did when I was 10 or 15, sort of a shorter time period. And I can still remember a great uncle who fought in World War I, and I spent some time with them in the 1960s, and I wish I had asked him a lot more questions, but I think the Great War, that 100 years, isn't that long ago. So historical time for me has shrunk, but in contrast to historical time, I am awed by how long bird and tree species have been around compared to us. And just to give a few examples, the Kari and rimu trees date back to the time of the dinosaurs and were common trees in both hemispheres 75 million years ago. And in fact, when we walk through New Zealand forests, it's Gondwana land forests. For some reason, we were protected from the conflagration that wiped out most other trees in the Northern Hemisphere 65 million years ago. They think it might be because a comet hit the Yucatan Peninsula and started these huge tsunamis and fires. But we were far enough from it that our trees were protected. So we have these beautiful old forests, and we're looking at things that are millions and millions of years old. I mean, the ancestors of the trees. And another great example, the tuatara, is a member of a reptile family that was quite complex, important, and large 100 million years ago. But now it's the only surviving member of the family. Here in New Zealand, that's it. There's nothing else like it anywhere in the world. So there have been, though, some birds that have been introduced. When English colonists got over here, they felt homesick and they brought birds over. And like sparrows, house sparrows are an example of that. Starlings, mynas from Asia. They've been here less than 100 years, let's say, call it 100 years. But others, kiwis, kakas, kias, and then the extinct moas, they date back 60 to 80 million years. So quite a long time. And when I go outside of the city, and I'm in a natural place, I look around at the pulse of the non-human natural life, and I think about how long it's been going on, like the migration at Miranda, where the shorebirds from Asia come every October and leave about now back for Asia. And that length of time humbles me, and I view these spaces as sacred in my theology. As the term sacred comes to mind when I look around. And just for a minute, 60 million years is, it's hard to contemplate, actually. That it's not, and so I was trying to think of ways that I could contemplate it. There's been, you can do the tape measure and say, this inch is historical time, and then like Grayland, a kilometer away, is 60 million years. But one way I thought of it is Eden Park. I've been to Eden Park when it's sold out, 45,000, 50,000 people. And if you take 12 sellouts of Eden Park, so look at Eden Park 12 times, and every person in every seat is 100 years, that's 60 million years. So, but it's amazing to contemplate how long these things have been going on. And what I'd say is, as a society, sort of being newcomers, we're sort of indifferent. We're surprisingly blasé about losing species that have been around for so long, right? So, we had 130 land species in New Zealand, and we've lost half of them. But that is the most intelligent species on the earth today. So we have a responsibility to protect the planet, and that's consistent with the seventh Unitarian principle. And 6 years ago, I gave a talk on climate change and the importance and the threat of climate change. So then now, in the last 5 years, I haven't given a talk on this new topic, but I've become increasingly interested in intelligent life in the universe. And that's to further reflect back to search for truth and meaning. And it's been a very interesting space. There's some great movies in the space. The three that I'd recommend that are reasonably scientific, like backed by real scientists, are Contact, Interstellar, and Arrival. Those three, I'd say, are the top ones because they're based in science. And also, though, in the last 10 years, very, very exciting, the powerful telescopes, both on ground and then circling the Earth, have found many planets in other solar systems that are in the Goldilocks zone. And what that means is about the right distance to be neither too hot nor too cold. And so there was an idea is maybe the Earth, maybe our solar system is just unique in how the planets are placed and things. But just in the last 10 years, that's been disproven, is that there's a lot of other solar systems like us. So, but there's a reasonable question, is if there's so many other solar systems out there, literally billions, that could have life on them, then why wouldn't we be seeing a lot of flying saucers? And some people believe that there have been a lot of flying saucers, but let's just say I haven't seen any, so can't be that common. But I would make the following observations in thinking about why we aren't seeing flying saucers. One is distance is quite a challenge to space travel. So take the fastest spaceship that we have today. It would take astronauts 180,000 years to reach Alpha Centauri. So, I mean, that's a daunting task. And by the way, there's some crazy folks who just believe we're going to invent technology so that once we use the Earth's resources up, we can move someplace else. 180,000 years is a tough one to surmount. Oh, and there's a second problem, and that is we haven't figured out how to protect astronauts against radiation, and that would kill them in a few years before they're 180,000. So there's like two big possibilities, and it could be that intelligent life in other places also have that challenge. Now, so actual manned or human travel is hard, but there's a real possibility in the next 100 years that we'll successfully communicate with other intelligent life through radio signals. And because the powerful telescopes are figuring out where the solar systems are with the Goldilocks stuff, we can target radio signals much more effectively. And so there is, what astronomers believe, there is a real possibility of communicating that way. And then, most intriguingly, and this is just something I found on Tuesday, has anyone heard of Oumuamua, a object? Oumuamua, okay. So this is an object traveling through our solar system now. It's not going toward Earth, but it's traveling through our solar system as we speak. It was discovered just 18 months ago, in October 2017. The head of the Harvard Astronomy Department, a professor named Avi Loeb, believes that it is a space probe, likely, it's not 100% sure, but likely a space probe from intelligent life outside our solar system. And if you go on Avi Loeb, L-O-E-B, and look at the New York article, he gives 6 reasons why. So it's really, and one of the reasons is it's not a comet. There's no comet tail coming from it. It's a funny shape, a big cylindrical shape. It's going at a different speed than anything we've seen go through the solar system at, and it appears to have a solar sail. It appears to have a big sail alongside it, which we've never found before with any object. And so NASA, believe it or not, is considering whether it could launch a probe to reach Oumuamua before it leaves our solar system. I just found that was fascinating to think about, talk about how life could be reshaped and our view of our place in the universe could be reshaped. So anyway, now you may be wondering, so I'm going through, but I haven't got to the pledge drive yet. Okay, so I'm going there. Yeah, good. Okay. But that's my theology. Look, I had a chance to stand up in front of you, and I've given you 10 minutes on my theology. But so this has been, the Unitarian Church has been a center of this search for me. But there's 3 other reasons that I come to church. Number 1, the people that I meet in Unitarian congregations are interesting. 2, I am challenged by the ideas presented at the congregation. And 3, it is important for Unitarianism to have a voice for rationalism in the world over the coming century. Let me explain each of those in a little more detail. First First, the people that I meet at Unitarian congregations are interesting. And if I look at this congregation specifically, in addition to the talks after the service that I have with people, men's group that I've been in for 20 years has just been fantastic on the talks that we've had there and what I've learned about myself, listening to other folks' stories, helping each other. And then Adultary has been fantastic. Clay's going to kick off another Adultary new session next month. And what I like about Unitarians is we attract people who don't have all the answers, but like me in different ways are trying to better understanding the meaning of life and how to live it in a more satisfying and meaningful way. And I love to be on that journey with fellow Unitarians. And then second, I'm challenged by the ideas presented during our service. So that's number two, the reason. When I think back, I can remember great sermons at multiple Unitarian churches, including several from Clay here. One I remember like maybe 2 years ago brought me to tears. And they've changed the way I think about the world. I think about them all week. I sometimes still think about sermons from years ago. And they've made me aspire to live a better life. And then the third reason for being a Unitarian, for me, is to offer a voice of rational hope within just a world that I see has increasing, certainly ecological challenges, but now also political challenges. And to talk just for a minute about populism. Much of Europe and North America now, I mean, we could argue everywhere, are being increasingly influenced by populist leaders who no longer try to work in the interest of the whole country. So they moved away for trying to represent the whole country. They instead appeal to members of their base. It's almost tribal. And there's an us and them, and they try to marginalize them. And if you go back and look at the definition of democracy, one of the problems on democracy is it's always struggled with the rights of minorities. Okay, if you're a minority in a democracy, you might say that's great, but potentially you don't have any power. And so populism is a new threat to all healthy democracies, and we can't afford to be complacent anywhere, even here, even New Zealand. Probably don't have to tell you after the March 15th shooting. And now, what is it for Unitarians, though? In an era of increasing intolerance and hostility toward minorities in many societies, we can bring our rationalism and openness and build bridges with similarly tolerant Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, to provide needed opposition to fundamentalism and political and social intolerance. And Joys and Concerns, David, you talking about going to the Muslim congregation is spot on the contributions of Unitarians going forward. So let me summarize. I come to the Unitarian Church because of the people that are here. The ideas that I encounter here help me to give my life more meaning, and the role we can play in making the world a better place. And that is why Mary and I consciously give our time and money to the church. So now finally, the pledge drive. There are many obligations in life. For example, most of us get up and go to work each day because we need to make money and have to pay taxes by law. And even family get-togethers, we think they're optional, but there's sort of a bit of obligation there as well, often. But for our church, we are here because we choose to be here. We choose to give our money and our time to the church when we have plenty of good alternatives for both. And the church needs about $110,000 of cash to run each year. The items of spend are the minister's salary and expenses, which call it $55,000 of our budget, building expense items like insurance, utilities, repairs, part-time education and music. That adds up to about $50,000 to $60,000. Now, we have income as well, so I'm giving you just a little sense of the income statement. We have pledge income of $58,000, rental income of $11,000, other fundraising income of $17,000, and draws of inside and outside reserves meet the balanced budget. And Clay mentioned in his opening words about paying forward. These reserves are people in the past who gave money to the church that continues to help us today. And there's been a fund, like what I just said, paying forward, Mackey Trust. I think there's a Mackey plaque there. And they provided us a 5-year bridge that's been slowly going down, and it phases out this year. And so we need about $8,000 more in internal pledge income to balance our budget, about a 12% increase. 12% increase might seem like a big number, but we've accomplished so much in the 5 years, doubling our membership base from 42 to 84. New projector system, new things are continuing to happen, new projector system, new adult RE program, and peace and social justice in my 20 years, never more comprehensive than what we have today. So the average membership unit in our congregation gives about $800. 12 units give over $1,000. But while pledge income is part of what we need to run the congregation, not everyone is in a financial position to give the average or even the minimum contribution, per David's comments. And let me reemphasize this. Unlike so many things in our life, any contribution you make, church is voluntary, and you make it because you can afford it and want to. And some of us won't be able to afford it, and that's okay. Others will make up the difference. Another critical point on the pledge drive is it's not just about giving money, it's also about considering whether you can give time as well. Our church has a management committee, peace and social justice committee, finance committee that would welcome new members. We have some big fundraising activities, such as the service auction this spring, that need time more than money. And I'll also mention that the biggest improvement in our budget this year actually didn't come from pledges. It came from a great idea that Kay had, and Paul and others have helped with puzzle rentals that have generated over $10,000 in new income to the church. That was members given time, not money. So the biggest challenge for a modestly sized congregation like us is for enough of us to do a little bit so that the most active members don't get burned out. It's been a consistent challenge as I've watched the congregation over the last 20 years. So if you would have any more time to give the church, please talk to me, Clay, or one of our management committee members, and think of doing something that you would like to do. It's bad when you volunteer and you don't really like what you're doing on volunteering, but we have all sorts of stuff that could be a match for you if you have a bit of time. And so this is a congregation with an incredible generosity of spirit, and on behalf of the whole congregation, thank you to everyone who's given time and money over the past year and will pledge over the coming year. So thank you for sharing the last 20 minutes with me, listening to my stops on my spiritual journey, my Unitarian search for truth and meaning, and exploring what I describe as the wonderful mystery of life. And as we look around this beautiful 118-year-old building, see the plaques on the wall from previous committed members and members who died in World War I and World War II. And I think about the 6,000 Sunday sermons that have been given in this building, 6,000. I feel honored to be part of this rich tradition and exciting future. Thank you.
For our meditation, I invite you to get comfortable. It's entitled There's With Us Still by Kathleen McTeague. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives, and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into dust and have not disappeared. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living. For my closing words, sing to the power of the faith within. Sing to the power of our deep love, our strong hope and bright joy. But flex the power of these gifts too. Put your faith and hope to use. Share your joy and love more freely than you thought possible. For together we use these tools to carve out lives of wonder, purpose, and service.